Hey, beautiful people. This is Denise here. Just wanting to hop on for a little bit and share with you some things that um, I am remembering, learning, discovering that I thought maybe you would benefit from. So many of you know that I've been in Puerto Rico, and for some time I'm back in the States right now, and just been really learning some important messages, or really being reminded of some important messages, and all of those things really have led to kind of what I want to share today, and I think that um, it's just great information for all of us. And so, those of you who follow me on social media, you know that I've been sharing um, cards each day, oracle cards. So today's card was the goddess Nematona, and she represents the sacred space. And on the card it says, create an altar or visit a power place to connect with the divine. And so, on the surface, a lot of us think about, physically creating an altar or going to a sacred space. And what I want to talk today about is you being that sacred space and what that looks like and what that means. And, the reality is most of us do not see ourselves as a sacred space. We see other things as more sacred. So we see the church building, or the pastor, or the priest, or the Babalao, or Oprah. We see these people as more sacred, more together, more important than ourselves, right? And while we are to honor and respect those things, because really they're just reflections of us, we kind of get lost in this space of remembering that we are the sacred space, that the way that we elevate other people, that we should be kind of taking care of ourselves and doing that for ourselves. So, my question to you is, what would happen if you were really intentional about doing something to help yourself develop in this way, develop holistically, develop personally? So we are quick to develop in certain areas. We go back to school, we take classes to advance us in our career and with hobbies. But what do we do that's intentional to develop all areas of our life, right? And it's my belief that until we enter into those kind of processes, that we will be overdeveloped in certain areas and underdeveloped in others, or we, will feel really confident in one area. I guess I'm saying the same thing. We'll feel really confident in one area and not so much in others. And we'll always be brought back down to like, what is this? Like, I'm doing so well in my career. Why am I not experiencing the same success in my relationships, or, with my children, or with my family, So perhaps instead of just focusing on what will build your business, what if you focused on you, So there's like a lot of different types of things that you could do. I'm just giving some examples. Maybe something like yoga teacher training that is about connecting mind, body, spirit. So whatever it is, it should match the intention. So if I'm trying to develop all of me, then that program, that process, that experience should also match that intention. So the things should also be connecting all of those things. So like not just taking yoga classes, but actually getting trained. Even though if you have no desire to teach yoga, the lessons, the tools, the things that you'll get will help you develop in all of those areas. Some people go to therapy. Some people get a life coach. Whatever it is, you know, some people begin to do more physical activities, you know, running, working out. And you can do that too if you're able to combine all of those different areas, mind, body, spirit, right? So what I want to discuss today is, you know, how do we go about creating the sacred space, right? So when I think of, let's start with like the physical or some kind of physical entity. So let's think about our house. So many of you have probably seen the show Hoarders, right? And you see how clearly these are examples where people are not honoring the space that they live in, right? So I'm using that kind of to walk you through what it is that we need to be mindful of as we are creating the sacred space within us, okay? So usually when, you know, there is a Hoarders episode, you know, the person or somebody has to acknowledge and identify like they need help, right? So I think that that is very important. Just venting or complaining about something is not the same thing as making a request or asking for help. So a lot of people, we spend a lot of time just sharing, but we don't say, hey, what do you think? Can you help me, right? So acknowledging I need help, acknowledging, you know what, like I'm tired of this. Right? That's usually step one, acknowledging. And sometimes when people are in a position where they can't, somebody intervenes and they call and they ask Hoarders, you know, to come and help my family, right? So acknowledging what you're feeling, being honest, I would say that's step one. And then you have to kind of sort through things. You know, they don't necessarily go straight to throwing things out. Talk about, you know, how you feeling, how you got here, kind of some background information to figure out how do we get here. I think that's important. Once you do that, you also like, and now you're ready to admit, like, it's time for me to let some things go. There's now a process where you have to sort through the things that you know, want to keep and the things that you want to let go. And if you've seen the show Hoarders, you know that in most cases, the person who lives there cannot be the person who's sorting through what I need to keep and what I need to let go, because they're just not able to. You don't see yourself in the mess that you're in, right? So I believe that when we are in these, this is why being in some kind of process is important, because we're tricky. We think like, oh, I know I can do this, you know, I can sort through it, you know. But if you could, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be needing the help, or you wouldn't be stuck. So usually there's someone that assists you with that. They're not the ones doing it, but they're there to kind of offer the support, the guidance, to help you do what you simply just can't do at that time by yourself. But in them sharing, you know, they're also teaching you how to do this when you're in a healthier place. So it's important that there be a guide, someone there to assist you doing the work. So now you're sorting through what you want to keep, what you want to let go. And then there's a cleansing process. You know, you've removed these things, you know, that have cluttered your space, and now you got to clean it out. Once you've cleaned it out, it's nice and, you know, fresh. You begin to replace that space with new things, new items, and maybe not brand new. Maybe some of the stuff is things that you had before, but now it's repurposed. New intentions, you know, new desires. And then, you know, once you enter back into the space, it's important to move as if, you know, you're in the new space. Move as if you deserve it, that's what you want. You know, a lot of times, you know, people have talked about, like, after they lose weight, that even though they've lost the physical weight, they still have this mindset, or they still see themselves in a way as the bigger person. So how are you moving as if, like, kind of what you see, the physical, and what you see in your mind is the same? So when I talk about us creating a sacred space or seeing ourselves as sacred space, And we are now moving away from just these exterior things like a house. And I'm talking about us inside. We want to look at the different parts of ourselves. So there is the physical self, right? The body. There is the mental self, our mind. There is the spiritual self, the part of us that connects to something bigger than us. And there's the emotional self, the heart, what we're feeling, right? So I want to kind of walk through those 4 areas, and I want to revisit those steps of the process. Because I think that sometimes we focus on some of those things, right? And I've shared this, I think, in other videos, that like for me, like the mental, the spiritual, and some of the emotional, that's still a challenge, but the emotional, I'm willing to like be up all in those spaces in my own space. Physical, that has always been something where has been challenging for me. So let's start with the physical, right? So step 1, remember, is to acknowledge, right? So how do we acknowledge that something's not right with our body? There's a lot of things that we can do. Maybe meditating. There, you could do a body scan of some sorts to identify where you're experiencing pain, or just, be honest. My body don't feel right. My back hurts. My throat hurts. My ankle hurts. Whatever. Be honest about that. Or be honest that, like when I look in the mirror, what I see, the weight that I have on me, doesn't align with who I say I am or who I want to be. Without judgment. Don't look at yourself like, ooh, look at my thighs, like, dang, I need to do something. Because no one's motivated to move when that's how you're looking or seeing yourself. But just observing, I feel great and I look in the mirror and it just doesn't match with what I'm feeling and seeing. And so maybe I need to make some adjustments. So acknowledge where you are, right? So now we're wanting to like remove the clutter, sort through, cleanse. So with your body, that could be, a detox in the sense where you're actually doing some kind of cleanse, to clear out the body. You may do something like hot yoga where you're sweating and, things are coming. The sweat kind of does a cleansing of some sorts, right? And you're sorting through kind of what you need to keep and what needs to be let go. So maybe you throw away certain foods that really don't help you accomplish the goals that you have. Replacing it with different foods. Maybe making new choices as far as what you eat. And not with judgment. So it's not about like, I can't have this or I can have this, but perhaps just this is what I will eat, and I won't eat. It's not because this is bad and this is good. It's just, this aligns with what I say that I'm doing. Because when we usually tell ourselves, I can't have that, I can't, usually that's when we want it more, right? And so that's how we kind of sort through the physical part. So now we've made new decisions. Maybe I'm now working out, I'm eating better, and I'm able to get, what it is that I want or have what I want to experience as it relates to my body. And usually, for some people, they can understand that very easily. And especially if you don't struggle with weight, then it's easier for you. Some people have a really hard time in that area, but it makes sense for people. Then you have your mental body. So in acknowledging where you are, what's your process for identifying what your thoughts are? Are you talking about what you're thinking? Do you meditate? Do you write things down? How do you kind of purge or release what is going on, in the mind? And again, I'm going to keep emphasizing, not with judgment, not I think this, that is bad, I think this, that is good, but really just allowing yourself to see this is what I'm thinking, right? And paying attention to what are those thoughts that empower you and uplift you. So if you're talking about people or gossiping, and I'm not above gossiping, it happens. But if you're talking about people, a question to ask instead of whether or not this is good or bad is, does it empower you? Does it uplift you? Do you really feel better after you spend all this time talking about people? Or does it disempower you? Does it bring you down? And look at that over the time, because sometimes it's tricky. Like sometimes we do talk about people and it does make us feel better for the moment, because usually what we're doing is we're comparing ourselves. They got this going on and I don't, so I must be better, right? But if you keep having to compare yourself to that person, are you really feeling good? Because most people I know that are living their best life don't have time to sit and look at what other people are doing, because you out here doing your thing. You don't have time to sit about, how other people are living, because you are doing your thing. So now you want to begin to kind of cleanse and replace those old thoughts with new thoughts. So you want to think about what you want to experience. What do you want to experience with this person, with this thing, with myself? What thoughts do I want to hold? What thoughts do uplift me? And from that place, now I can make decisions that match with what I say that I want to experience. Okay, so that's how we would handle it, as it relates to the mental. And feel free, if you have questions, you feel free to leave the questions in the comments, and I'll address them. Okay. When we look at our spiritual body or our spiritual self, this is where it can get a little tricky, because now, especially with this generation and younger generations, what could I say? We kind of feeling ourselves with like our spiritual awakening, our, now we aren't religious, we're spiritual, and some of us have elevated to, where we may not identify as being a Christian anymore. And now, we are studying, traditional African spiritual systems, which I'm all for, and I love it. And I'm actually really excited, that a lot of Black people are asking a lot of questions, and just wanting to explore and see like what else is out there. Like, this ain't working for me, and I just want to know. So I'm with it, right? But regardless of what your faith is, because really, that is irrelevant for what I'm talking about now, right? But if your space isn't sacred, if your spiritual body is cluttered, it doesn't matter which practice or faith you are practicing. I'm talking about, how do we begin to create a sacred space within you and your spiritual body? Because there are a lot of people out here of all faiths who claim to be whatever they claim to be and are a hot mess. And everybody knows it and everybody sees it. And they really, I think some people are really lost to, they think, well, I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to, so why am I not experiencing, breakthroughs and all of that stuff? Okay, so let's go through. All right, so let's acknowledge, what is your practice? So not just what do you believe, not, oh, I'm a Christian, or, oh, I practice, Akan or Ifa. That's not what I'm asking. So regardless of what that is, what is your daily spiritual practice? What do you do? And do you feel fulfilled? Right? For many years, I was doing kind of the right thing, or doing what I thought that I was supposed to do, and, faithfully attending church and faithfully attending Bible study and surrounding myself with, other believers. And I wasn't fulfilled. What I mean by that is that I felt boxed in and limited, and everybody wants you to kind of come as you are and ask certain questions, but if you ask certain questions, we don't got the space for that. We don't talk about that here, right? So I was just eager to learn and wanted to know more, and I felt there was a limit to what I could ask. And it wasn't even about kind of where I was in my walk. It was clear that people were just uncomfortable or they didn't have the answers. And it was cool if they didn't have the answers. But just say, I really don't know. I'm going to look into it. Or refer me to somebody else that I could get the answers. So my question is, do you feel fulfilled? And who do you surround yourself with? And what type of places do you go? What do you like about what you're doing? So if you go to church, what is it that you really enjoy about it? What don't you like? This is the part of the process of creating the space where you're like sorting through what works and what doesn't. It just is bringing mindfulness to you. So you're not just going through the motions and just saying, oh yeah, like I know this works and it's good. How do you know? What steps, what are you doing to make sure that it works for you now? Because as you grow, what you want changes a little bit. It doesn't mean that you have to completely abandon, your faith or what you've been doing, but maybe you're just now making some adjustments. I require a little more now, right? So, and then, I think I asked this already, but like, what are the actual things that you do that would let me know that this is a priority to you, right? What is your own personal practice looks like, not what you just do one day out of the week. So for many people, I grew up, I think my dad's on here. I grew up seeing my dad read the Bible every morning, and it mattered. It was evidence, or one piece of evidence that let me know that was, this thing here is a priority to him, right? So what evidence do you have in your life, your daily life, that would show that this area is a priority to you? So perhaps you pray. Perhaps you read something inspirational. Perhaps you meditate. For some people, they dance. For some people, they like scents. Like for me, scents are important. Like I light incense every day. I use essential oils, and it takes me to another place. It helps me to connect to the divine in a way that my words don't, right? So, so what are those things that you do? And how often do you do it? Do you just do it one day a week? And how's that working? Is it enough? Are you going to your place of worship exhausted because you're kind of just waiting for the day to come to do those things again? Is it something you do daily? And based on what you believe, based on your faith, do you make decisions as if what you say you believe is true? I talked a little bit about this, I think, in the last video that I posted. I use this very example where a lot of people refer to God as their provider, But the way that you move as it relates to money, or how you trust God with money and provision, you don't move in a way that believes that God is a provider. We are often afraid. We make decisions based off of fear. Like, I know God is my provider, but just in case, let me go ahead and do this. Or let me stay at this good job because, I need my money, my paycheck. So how does that align with, what you say that you believe? So these are just things to consider when you are looking at yourself as a sacred space. And so not just kind of the things that you're doing outside, but really what I'm trying to get you to or help you see is kind of what's going on inside, right? And then last is your emotional body, your emotional self. So let's talk about acknowledging kind of where you are emotionally. So many of us, we do not have the vocabulary, the emotional vocabulary to identify what we're feeling, right? I know I didn't for years. I was happy or sad, or I felt good, I felt bad. That's what I would say, right? Maybe having like an actual vocabulary list for emotions. That's kind of what I had to do through one of my processes. I used that as a tool so that I could identify what I really was feeling. Okay. And remember, that's just acknowledging I feel frustrated, right? And then like sorting through those feelings without judgment. So I used to think like feeling angry was bad. It was not. Good girls don't feel angry. I could be disappointed and frustrated, but anger was not something that I really allowed myself to feel. And I remember that I had to almost make myself angry as a way to really process these emotions that just because I wasn't feeling them as an adult doesn't mean that they weren't still there. So there were things throughout my life that I was like pissed off about, right? And I held it. Or maybe I went to my friend and I told them how pissed off I was, but I didn't really address it with the person, right? Or I didn't do anything. I just vented. And that can be a release for some people, right? But I would talk about these emotional things from a very like intellectual place. I would kind of walk through, tell the story about what happened as if it wasn't me. So I might be angry, but I would sit and talk like this. And yeah, I'm just really angry at such and such, or, I just didn't like that, when perhaps maybe some other kind of words, some choice words should have been spoken, to match what I was feeling. So if I was yelling, and it's not about right or wrong, but for me to actually process this thing, what I'm saying should match the emotion. So if this is another one that I was good for. I would be excited and I would look like this, like, yeah, I'm so excited. Just no emotion. I just created this like space where I didn't feel things too much. And me personally, it was so I thought that if I, kept things here that I would be safe. Because I really didn't want to experience, the bad feelings. So if I just stayed in this space where, I didn't really feel a lot, like I'm just good. That I would never have to feel those things that were unpleasant, but that doesn't work because you can't feel the things you do want, so when I'm pissed, when I'm sad, when I'm grieving, when I'm uncomfortable, when I, feel disrespected, it should sound, feel, look different than when I am, excited, when I am, overwhelmed with joy. Like it should look and feel different. So allowing yourself to feel all emotions, okay? And having a space with other people where they allow you to do that. And if you notice that I can't talk to people about how I'm feeling, then I would have you, consider what kind of relationship is this, and you do have some relationships where that's just not your thing. That's not the agreement that you've made with each other. But you should have a couple of people where I can express any emotion at any time, and like they like I'm, all right, I'm with you. You know what I mean? I feel you. Or okay, or maybe they don't say anything, but they allow you to feel and to do it without telling you that you're right or wrong, that it's valid, because it is valid. What you feel is what you feel, right? So you want to acknowledge all of the feelings, and then from there you want to. And that's where we stop. Usually, we will vent and we will talk to people about how we're feeling, and then we just kind of move on. And I have actually been in situations where people will vent and I will offer something to see if they want to move out in a different place. And they're like, no, like, I'm good. I just need to vent. Okay. And you don't have to do that with me, but there should be a space where you take an action step based on this, right? So once you are able to not only acknowledge but really process and kind of sort through where these feelings coming from, and I want to talk about that, and I'm almost finished. Um, our emotional wounds, they are triggers, right? So I remember one time I was with my students. We were doing a warm up where they had to write about what triggered their anger, and you had some who were very, clear. They understood like what were the things and people that really like upset them. And some people were like, I don't know, I just begin angry and I just go off. And most of them also talked about how guilty they felt and just horrible they felt because they just would go to this place and not know why and really didn't know what to do about it. So then we talked about, well, what do you do when you get to that place? How do you manage your anger? And some of them shared very candidly what they do when they are upset. And and my place wasn't to judge what they do, because for me, I'm all about having a toolkit of things to do to manage how you're feeling. And but I talked about what are healthier ways or healthy ways to manage your emotions. And we also talked about the fact that, like, we say things like kind of time heals all wounds. And I use the example with them that, like, if I broke my leg, the time just healed that wound. They're like, no, you need to go to the doctor. And so I'm asking, how is it different when there's a wound here? So in what ways are you going to the doctor? In what ways are you addressing the wounds that are in here that you can't see on the outside, right? And so, I was explaining to them that when you feel the pain, right, it's no different than like physical pain. So like if I had a cut and somebody, poked at my cut, it would hurt, right? And the pain is just there to let me know, like, girl, it's a cut. Like, you need to get do something. Band-Aid, go to the doctor, have surgery, whatever. Tend to it. So the same thing is happening with our emotions. That when, someone triggers us or pokes at us, because that was a common thing. It's like, it's just people that they just know how to get to me, right? When they're poking at you, or so you think, we spend so much time focusing on other people and how they offend us and how I didn't like how I felt, or, that wasn't right, or they this, or I can't be around them. Maybe or maybe not. We'll get to that later. But right now, let's focus on the fact that you feel the pain. The pain is there to let you know that you need to tend to it. It's not about, we'll get to what they did and all that stuff, but for you, let's talk about it. Let's tend to it, right? And so with my students, I talked about how, it's the same process. You are not the doctor necessarily, especially when that ain't your area of expertise. Now, some of us, we grow to be better and we can kind of manage ourselves a little better, but still, even then, we have blind spots that we don't identify. So who are you going to that helps you, where you can share the wound with, that will help you be like, okay, looks like we need to pour some, peroxide or whatever on it. There needs to be a process where you can talk about the emotions. And so from there, you may identify like maybe some beliefs that you're holding, which is why you feel, or maybe for some people it's about going back to experiences that you had that you didn't deal with. It might be that. Either way, until you have that process where you can kind of sort through it, it's very difficult for you to now make new decisions, because if you aren't really healed, or at least on some level, every decision that you're making is still from that wounded place. And it's really just so like, I don't want it to hurt. You know what I mean? But the whole time, like, it's healed. Like when you touch it, it doesn't hurt as much. If your wound always is hurting and you having to walk around like this all the time, then it's indication that it ain't healed, right? And there's like levels to it. Like there's a time when, because I've just finished surgery, I gotta stay at home a little bit, and I gotta allow it to heal. And even though I don't want to be in the bed, I do because I'm healing, right? But if now the wounds is kind of clearing up and it doesn't hurt, but you're still in the bed, you could see in that situation where something would be off. But we don't really spend the time with our emotional stuff. We make what we feel about other people, or we get so like wrapped up in our feelings that we play it out over and over and over again in our head and feel it and stuff, and me too, right? So if you don't have a doctor, a guide, support to help you to do that, then it's going to limit you. And what I know is that once you're able to go, I remember the same conversation with my students. I shared there was an actual student in the class who had broken his leg, or he's wearing a cast of some sorts, and no, it was just something that happened to his leg, and he was in physical therapy. And I asked him, and I said, like such and such, like tell me about physical therapy, like, how's it feel? And he's like, it hurts like hell, right? And I explained to them that sometimes the healing process is actually more painful sometimes than the wound or that event or that thing that took place. Sometimes it's more painful, and that's why a lot of people don't want to do it, right? But nevertheless, if you want to heal from it, you got to go there. So I get it that there's some things I don't want to talk about, I don't want to acknowledge. Like, who wants to keep reliving? But you are reliving it when you don't acknowledge it, when you don't deal with it, when you don't cry about it, when you don't, scream about it. Until you actually go through that, you're still reliving it. And so when you go through the process and that you heal to some degree, because it's not as painful when someone pokes, from there you can make decisions that empower you. The other decisions may keep you sacred or it's not sacred, safe, and they may keep you, that it's for survival. Like if I have a cut, I'm gonna, or if I broke my arm, I'm gonna be, treat it gently. I'm gonna make sure that I'm more mindful, right? But after it's healed, I don't have to be so like cautious anymore. I'm free to kind of do whatever. And so you want to get to that place where you're making decisions from that place, where it's not because I'm hurting or I'm afraid that if you rub against me that I'm going to be hurt again. I'm making choices because I'm free. I'm free. I feel good, and this is what I want to experience. And that's why I'm making this new choice. And so I'm saying this all to say that we have work to do within ourselves, right? So let us for, a moment stop looking at how we can go to these sacred spaces outside of ourselves, to the altar, which is important. I got an altar, a couple of them, right? Or go to these, sacred sites, which are important, but spending time going to this sacred space. And I'm also suggesting that some of it you cannot do by yourself, right? And when you see people like on Hoarders or like on, the extreme cases where people like can't get out of bed because they're overweight, they think that they're like okay, You see what I'm saying? They think they're okay. A lot of times we think that we're okay. We think, I got it, I'm doing it, I'm all right, I know what I'm doing. And so when someone is like saying something to you, sometimes it's not them hating or trying to come at you. Sometimes they're looking like, but you ain't left your bed in years. You see what I'm saying? And if you watch these shows, you see how people, they become defensive. They are making excuses, or they begin pointing fingers at you and saying what you doing and what you not doing and how you did them wrong. This is why it's important, one, to ask for help, because if you don't ask for help, you can't get the help that you need, and you can't get the support that you need, because if you could do it by yourself, you wouldn't be in this position anyways. And to go back to what I started, this video with, is that most of us don't see ourselves as sacred. We don't value ourselves. We don't see ourselves important. And then there are extremes of it. You have some people who think very highly of themselves in a way that is unhealthy. Now, I'm all about having confidence, but there are people who are cocky and arrogant, and usually you can tell because they always are comparing themselves to someone else. I'm better than, my thing is better than such and such, right? And so if that's what keeps you confident or keep me feeling good, like, well, what kind of real confidence is that? Then you have the other people on the other side of the spectrum where they think so lowly of this, I'm nothing, I don't deserve anything, right? There is a healthy balance where you understand who you are, put aside the roles that you play, and the titles that you hold and the things that you do, but who are you? When you take away all of that stuff, who are you? And do you believe that you are sacred? Do you believe that you are worthy and deserving and valuable, right? And the truth is, most of us don't, and we need help with that. And so I'd love to, hear your feedback and just your thoughts on the video and questions, maybe something that I said wasn't clear, because I know it could be a lot, but, let's have these conversations. So feel free to leave comments in the comment section. I'm going to also share this on the Akoma Wellness page. And if you haven't liked Akoma Yoga page on Facebook, please do so, and see, the amazing services that I offer, coaching, life coaching, educational consulting. This is stuff that needs to be talked about in schools, and not just for students, but for them teachers that's teaching them babies, because we as a educator, we've been a mess, and we've been responsible for teaching young people. And meanwhile, let me not just say teachers, because administrators too, leadership too, a hot mess, and you're responsible for young people, and you don't got your stuff together. So we need to be talking about this stuff in schools, with children, with the adults, and also yoga. Join me over on the Akoma Yoga page, or you can go to Akoma Wellness. I think I said Akoma Yoga. Go to the Akoma Wellness page on Facebook and Instagram, and you can also go to the website, akomawellness.com. And until then, have a fabulous day. Thank you for watching.